Hey guys, so I'm going to talk about denial today, which, like everything I talk about, I have a lot of experience in. So, essentially, denial is the refusal to acknowledge the truth in a situation, such as, like the emotion or the reality of it, and it's used as a defense mechanism most of the times. There is ways it can be used in a positive way, like, for instance, like cancer diagnosis, like whenever people find out information that's like that heavy and can be that psychologically distressing, their mind as a coping mechanism is in denial immediately because it allows your mind to over time, little by little, process something of that magnitude. So in that sense, that's like a lot healthier than just like getting destroyed by it and then scrambling and having panic attacks or anything of that nature. But most of the time, in my experience, if not all the time, denial is a detrimental behavior or way of thinking. So like my first example regarding that would be my drug addiction. So it started whenever I was smoking weed, and I refused to acknowledge the fact that weed in any way at all hindered my life. I thought it was great. I was like a weed advocate, like, oh, we legalize it. Idiot. So anyway, my grades were in the gutter. I was missing class. I was not pretty much just being a bum, totally unsuccessful in any regard. But I refused to see the connection between that and the drugs. So then, flash forward a few years, when I'm sitting in a treatment facility, still in denial about using harder drugs, that I'm a drug addict. Like, my drug use got to the point where I needed professional help, and I was still unwilling to admit it. So, a lot of times, and this is a shame, it takes a catastrophic event to bring people out of denial. Whether it be like an overdose or, an arrest or something like major like that, some major life consequence. And that's what it took for me, pretty much. Like, unfortunately, I had to deal with consequences like that to come to grips with the reality. And that was humiliating. It's humiliating to admit that, the reality that you pretty much like molded for yourself is untrue, because then you look back and you're like, wow, I just lived a lie for however long. And the thing that sucks is like the longer you do it, the more it compounds, and whenever it comes crashing down, the worse the blowback is, the worse the fallout is. So, for me, what I had to do was like listen to the people around me first and foremost. Like, if there's 15 people around me telling me that I'm a drug addict, yet I'm here saying, oh, I'm not a drug addict, like, I just love the way cocaine smells. Like, they're probably right, I'm probably wrong. It was another realization I had was that if I'm rationalizing and justifying a lot of my behaviors to people, even if I noticed a lot, like, even though people wouldn't ask me or like bring anything up, I would try and head it off. And before they even had the chance to ask, I would start justifying and coming up with these reasons why whatever I was about to do was right or, not bad. So those were things that I began to realize were a pattern that was, a part of denial, like they coincided. So it's that awareness has paid dividends in my life because now I almost I never like to speak in absolutes, so I won't, but I feel as if now like I'm at a point where I'm so honest with myself, and I listen to the people around me, like, that I don't get stuck in denial very often anymore, because I know how being in denial can hold a person back. It can hijack your entire life, honestly, because this is what'll happen is, if you're in denial about something at work, you're like, oh, it's my coworker's fault that this isn't happening. It's not my fault that this project is getting done. And then so your mind has that temporary fix, it works. So subconsciously, you come across another thing in your life that's difficult to come to grips with about yourself, and your mind's like, well, that worked last time, so let's, just brush off responsibility this time too. Let's just create our own reality here so we don't have to change anything. Everything's comfortable. And then before you know it, your whole life you're just living in denial, and it's one of your, it's like a pillar of your character at this point. And that's like such a dangerous place to be. Not only because it's just like an embarrassing and fake way to live, but eventually like I mentioned with catastrophic events, if one of those dominoes falls with one of those situations that you're in denial about, then all of a sudden your brain is going to look to all the other situations that you were in denial about. And then before you know it, reality as you've created it collapses. And then the truth comes out and smashes you in the face like a sledgehammer. And you want to talk about catastrophic? Like, I've been there. That things like that have ripped my what I thought was my identity to shreds. And I've had to build myself up from, from the drawing board. And that is a task that I would wish on nobody, because, it granted through going through, like, by going through things like that, it's put me where I am today, and it's made me like very self-aware, which I am so grateful for. Like, I know I have no regrets about any bad things that have happened to me in my life, but if I could help somebody else avoid doing those things and they can learn instead of having to go through it themselves, like, that would be phenomenal to me, because I just know how devastating it can be to realize, wow, everything I thought that I knew was wrong. That's humiliating. So, it's just all about awareness, and maybe even more so than awareness, being honest with yourself, which I'll probably have a video about that sometime in the future. But, being brutally honest with yourself isn't something that comes overnight, but it's pretty much the key to denial, specifically to combating it, because the arch rival of denial is truth, right? Like, if you are willing to accept the truth and the reality of a situation, no matter how unpleasant it might be, then you can start working. Because if you're in denial, then you're not able to work on anything. Like, you're treading water. But if you understand, okay, this is the situation at hand, it's terrible, I would do anything to not be in it, then you can say, what can I do now to fix it? So if you're in denial, you take all this responsibility off of yourself, so then you don't even think that you have anything to fix. So you'll never grow as a person in turn. And all of a sudden you're stagnant, and when you're stagnant, you get complacent. When you get complacent, then your mental health starts to drag, and then your self-worth and your self-confidence starts to drag. It's just like this whole plethora of negative behaviors and thought processes that come along with being in denial, that if you just pierce that veil with the sword of truth, which that sounds so cheesy, I'm sorry, but it's also kind of cool. If you just pierce that veil of denial with your sword of truth, then all of a sudden you're able to grow. You can fix your life, and it's going to take time, but anything worth having takes time to get. If you want to build a company that's worth millions, it's going to take time to do that. You're not just going to get it overnight. If like for me, I constantly work on being enlightened in a way, I guess, and just being really self-aware. Like, I constantly am reading and learning about this stuff, but I understand that I'll probably never get to where I want to be, but I work on it every day. It's not something like, if it was easy to be a bodybuilder, if it was easy to be a millionaire, if it was easy to like be enlightened, then everybody would be enlightened, then everybody would be rich, then everybody would be in shape. And that's just not the case. So I think that combating denial is a big problem for a lot of people, especially in a world and society where we can go online and we can just escape reality and with one click or one tap of an icon. So I challenge you to step back today and look at a situation that you've been justifying to people, because I'm sure we all have one, and really look at your part in it and be brutally honest with yourself. Take responsibility today. You owe it to yourself to take responsibility today, because then when you combat that and you start to grow from it, you'll look back and say, wow, that was so stupid. I never want to be like that again. And that's where we start to make our money, right? That's where things start happening. That's where changes start happening. So, I hope today that you can look objectively at yourself and be brutally honest, because, this is something that if you can successfully do, can change your life. Not to be dramatic, it really can though. It can be like a seismic shift in thinking if you start to be honest with yourself. So, I wish you guys the best, and thanks for watching.